Hi folks, Eric from Digosoft here. Hope you have a wonderful day. Today I want to quickly talk about Unicode confusables. There's a neat little library called Confusables by M. Tibben. It's on GitHub here. And that implements the Unicode TR39 algorithm. You can see here that is described in this document. What does it do? It takes any kind of Unicode string and maps it to some canonical string. That's not to be used as an identifier or for normalization of identifiers. Do not use it for that. It's used to identify similar looking strings. So if you have here a spoofed PayPal string, of course this is a very primitive spoof, but there are better ways of spoofing strings in Unicode. Then it's mapped to the same string as the original string. And so you can look up whether two, for instance, usernames kind of look similar. And I use that in my database. Of course, there's a trade-off. So I put this in it. Let me first show you here. I map this here in a function because I don't want to use some packages directly. I prefer to use them with a wrapper like this. That's just the way I handle this. And then in the database, I have an extra column where I store the skeleton for a particular username, for instance. There are also some other identifiers where I do this. And then I have this function has similar user that takes a Unicode string, maps it to the skeleton, and then looks up the skeleton. And that way you can very quickly check whether a user with a similar name already exists in the database. And then reject the new name, for instance. For me, this is quite important because I use usernames in my implementation as part of human-readable and human-usable addresses. So I don't want to have very similar addresses that might confuse people, because there are many kind of attacks you can do, right? You probably know that from websites when people reserve a domain name with some homophonic Unicode sequence that looks like the domain of some large site, but is not. And then people are directed to that. They don't see that it's the wrong site and enter their credentials. That's a standard attack. And you can do similar things here. You could, for instance, provide a link to the wrong user who pretends to be another user. So that's why I do that. If you use universal user IDs for anything security relevant, for identifying the users and then authenticating them, then you might not need this. But even then, it might be advisable not to allow two similar usernames, because people will use them to spoof other people's names. And the same for other users of identifiers. So, of course, the trade-off is that you need to have an extra database column in order to be able to look up whether this already exists. But I think that's a reasonable trade-off. So that's how I do this. I use this library. If you use another library, let me know. I would be interested in that. And that's it for today. Hope you found this interesting and see you another time. Bye.